Hello, it's Friday, and today we shall consider Ted Haggard and the underlying problem he represents. Not the problem of Satan tempting us into homosexuality, but the problem of people too inclined to repress their sexuality. The immoral and licentious affairs that result from this repression, the psychological problems, and, of course, just the sheer immorality of forcing people to deny who they really are in the name of a deity. Happy Friday! Alright, so fairly recently, allegations emerged that Pastor Ted Haggard was having an inappropriate sexual relationship with a young male church volunteer, and that the man who he was having it with claims it was not consensual. Now, I'm not going to confirm or refute these allegations. That's not my job. What I am going to say is that it's really indicative of a stronger problem. A problem which is the following. Ted Haggard is an undercover penis lover. Undercover penis lover. In 2006, it was pretty much established that Ted Haggard had homosexual tendencies, that he was engaging in secret homosexual relationships. This became pretty much the thing that we accepted. However, Ted did not change his homophobic and bigoted ideology. It was so ingrained, either in his persona, whether he believed it or not, it was so ingrained as a part of him that he did not get rid of that. Instead, he went to some therapy to turn him heterosexual. The psychologist, or whatever it was who supervised it, said that Ted Haggard is completely heterosexual after that. Now, what they are trying to do is get rid of this satanic and demonic influence that is tempting him towards homosexuality. Typical sexual repression bullshit. Ted Haggard is a flaming homophobe because inside he wants to be a flaming queen. He's so homophobic because he's been brought up and he's been part of the social circle that is pressured to believe that if you have sex with another man, or if you love another member of the same gender in any romantic or sexual manner, you are engaged in sin. And that's got to be pretty scary. To be told that your deep desires are just something that is put there by the devil, that they are something that if you do act on them, they will get you sent to a place full of giant stalactites and stalagmites and flaming hot giant poles and just a generally exceedingly hot atmosphere where things will get rammed up your ass and impale you. Wait. Was I describing something that, a fantasy that Ted Haggard repressed? But enough heavy-handed phallic references for the moment. Let's consider why people think like this and what harm it really does, because they're not the only ones who are harmed by this. Even exempting the victim if it turns out that Ted Haggard was engaged in something that wasn't consensual. Let's just consider the victims in terms of the gay community, in terms of other people who are going to end up repressed because of the likes of Haggard. Ted Haggard said something, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said that there's no need to debate homosexuality because the Bible already told us what to think there.
We've been living our life. Homophobia is its disguise, but it's time for you to confess. Penis is not the pet.
Well, the same can arguably be true of shellfish, or of slavery, or of women as chattel, or of, well, selling your children, or stoning them to death in the town square for being disobedient, but I think there certainly is need for debate on these things. I mean, well, really there shouldn't be a need to debate, because the biblical position should be so patently absurd, but if we need to debate, I think that the liberal position can win out, and the same is true on homosexuality. There is no reason to morally object to homosexuality. It's love. Love is something that should be embraced. It's just a way people are. It's not something to be condemned. But then there's Ted Haggard, and I think his homophobia was fueled to a great extent by how much he had to repress his own homosexuality. He had these beliefs already, of course, probably before his sexuality emerged, before he started feeling these things. But when he started feeling things that were extremely sinful, I'm guessing he wanted to compensate. He wanted to protect people from this demon that was inside of him. And so he said these things that will help further the climate of repression, help beat down those who happen to go outside of the conformist boundaries of heteronormative patriarchy. Basically, he made the sorts of statements, and he had a huge target audience. He had influence on various politicians, including people within the Bush administration, and yet he was able to influence them towards this puritanical, hateful ideal, this thing that helped create him, and that will create more like him. It's a self-perpetuating viral meme. It's the sort of thing that we cannot stand and watch without being horrified, because it doesn't just create sham marriages, it doesn't just create people who are psychologically unstable, it doesn't just create people who spend their lives denying who they are. It creates suicides, as Tyler Oakley pointed out in his Project for Awesome video about the Trevor Project. And we need to break the loop. Whenever you hear someone make a homophobic comment, whenever you hear someone argue that gays or bisexuals or pansexuals are immoral or inferior or tempted by some demonic force, or that if they act on their desires, they're engaged in sin, but we heterosexuals are just fine and dandy so long as we do our dirty little fun business within the confines of marriage, you need to stand up. You need to tell them why they're wrong. You need to say that this chauvinism, this bigotry, this fear, this puritanism, this outdated, primitive 15th century morality will die. I mean, by now, racism, it still permeates our culture. It still permeates America. But blatant, outright racism is reviled. So is, to a certain extent, blatant sexism. Homophobia needs to reach that level, because we can't let hatred and fear and puritanism and chauvinism drive the nation. We can't let that drive policy. We can't let it be the determining factor in the lives of so many real people who just want what any ordinary straight person wants, just with a different partner. One key goal should be to create a society where people can be who they really are, not who some outdated, puritanical concept of a god thinks they should be, where people love who they want to love, rather than acting out after years of repression, and acting out in secret in ways that destroy their morally bankrupt careers, where people don't resort to hypocrisy, where people don't create sham marriages that, regardless of our sexual ethics, really do undermine the sanctity of marriage. In other words, our goal should be a society in which no one feels compelled by their God, by their misplaced morality, by the pressures of their friends or of their career to be undercover.